It's often the little things, small behaviors that can change our lives. That's the power of a financial edge. I'm Ed Meek. I'm a financial advisor with a passion to help you retire early, save more, and live better. Welcome to Ed's Edge, the podcast to help you live the life you've always wanted. Giving money away. We all usually do it in some form or fashion. What we're going to focus on today is giving money to charities. And when I say charities, I don't mean children, friends, even though people will often say we hear this, charity starts at home, right? But what we want to focus on is charitable giving to 501c3, which are various types of charities that are non-for-profit. Why? Well, it's a big deal for a lot of people. And so this podcast is focused specifically on that. It's something that I have a history on. And we have a guest here today. Her name's Parissa Zargar. She works for Fidelity Investments with a product called Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund. She is an expert in this area. It's something that I have done for many years, as I said, personally. I'll give you a little bit of story and background on me. So the first big job I got out of college, I did for a couple of years, and then I was very fortunate to work at Fidelity Investments, which, as you know, is a great company to work for. I worked there for a long time, and when I was there early on, my wife and I had the desire to give money to some charities once we got married. And I learned about this Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund, which a term for it is something called a donor advised fund, which Parissa will help us understand a little bit better later. And this donor advised fund is a 501c3 in that it gives you a deduction. So what I would do is I liked it because my wife and I like to give money to a variety of charities in a year, like our church and then some other organizations. And instead of like writing them a check at various different places, we could do it in this one account and then send the money out from this one account. So I did that personally. I then started helping a lot of clients at Fidelity do that and started realizing that it's a very flexible account. And so I've been doing it nearly 30 years and have helped a lot of clients do that. And James, you were familiar with them a little bit when you got here, and you've had some clients use it as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, my eyes have been opened on the capabilities associated with the charitable giving fund, donor advised fund. And so today's purpose today is really to educate you all around how does it work? What are the advantages of doing it? Both the financial advantages, but also the non-financial advantages. And we're blessed to have Parissa here today to help educate us because this is your world. Parissa, what we'd love to start off with is talk to us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into this and what creates so much passion around this topic for you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for having me here today, Ed and James. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to speak with you both about this topic because it is something that I am so passionate about. And, started my career similar to Ed, where I started with Fidelity Investments in a variety of roles, working with end clients directly with financial planning. And I knew that I always wanted to help people and give back to nonprofits and find a way to help clients find their passion in philanthropy and ultimately give back to organizations. So really, I was blessed to come across this role at Fidelity Charitable after working with advisors like yourself for a few number of years on the custody platform. And it's been a wonderful transition and, really am fortunate to get to work with trusted advisors like you and Ed.
No, thank you so much. And so let's take a step back within this and talk to us about what is this donor advised fund, charitable giving fund, specifically then with Fidelity itself?
Absolutely. So it's a great question, and I get it quite often. So the donor advised fund that we offer, we call it the Charitable Gift Fund. So it's a really elegant, simple, and effective solution. It's a investment account, essentially, that has tax efficiencies, and it also has the capability of long-term investing for the future to give funds back to nonprofits over time. Fidelity Charitable, our mission is to grow the American tradition of philanthropy. And the way that we do that is through our donor advised fund program. So we offer a lot of different programming and resources to make sure that giving back is simple, effective, and a long-term solution.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. And so let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of it. Ed, you had alluded to this earlier, around some of the tax advantages and the simplicity of it. When you talked about, you hold it in this one account and then you can use it for a variety of things later. We'd love to hear more. I think of something we've talked about in the past in prior podcasts around health savings accounts and the tax advantages of this and how you can use it for certain things and all the benefits of doing so. So walk us through from start to finish, how does it work in very simple terms? And then we'll get into some more complex scenarios, if that's good by you.
Oh, absolutely. So we oftentimes describe the donor advised fund through 3 Gs. And those 3 Gs are give, grow, grant. So
give, grow, grant. Got it.
3
Okay.
Gs, yes. So give, you donate assets into the donor advised fund and you qualify for an immediate tax deduction. So this can be cash, this can be appreciated stock, this can be many other things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So that's the give portion. And then you have the ability.
Before you go on to the next one, I wanted to help people understand and make this clear. So a lot of times when people give money to charities, they hear, they will write checks with cash, which is great. But sometimes they don't realize how efficient it is if they can gift some other things, right? Some things that are appreciated. Sometimes people will have investments, stocks or ETFs or things that have grown a lot. And if you give those, you actually get this additional tax benefit by giving something. If you put, let's say, $10,000 into an investment, but it grew to 20 or 30. If you just held on to it for a while, many people have stock investments that have grown a tremendous amount of money. And if they give that into there, then they don't have to pay taxes on that gain. And they still get the deduction in a similar way that they would for writing just a check. And it's not just those kind of investments. I mean, there's a lot of things you can give into it, right?
Exactly. And that's the main point. One of the main points with the tax efficiency is that you can mitigate the capital gain taxes that you would ultimately pay if you were to sell these appreciated assets, sell these long-term stocks that you've held in your portfolio for many of years. Instead, you could donate those shares directly to the donor advised fund and actually never pay taxes on the capital gains.
Yeah, which is huge. Now, one thing which is kind of an assumption that we're talking about here is that this is for people who have a desire to have to give money. It's not like net a positive just to do this, just to do it. You have to have a desire to have it go towards a charity. And in addition to it, in certain circumstances, depending on one's tax situation and how much they give, they could get a deduction. You don't get a deduction the same way you did numerous years ago when they changed the tax code, because if you're gifting a lesser amount than a standard deduction on your taxes, then you have to choose one or the other.
Yeah. It's something we can certainly, for those interested in this, we can certainly discuss those tax advantages and what it applies to you individually. But what I've found is, because to your point on this give side, which we're sticking with right now, on the give component, if your desire is to give $10,000 a year, every single year, you can put in a substantial amount, maybe $50,000 of an appreciated stock that covers 5 years worth of giving, and you get all $50,000 deducted from your income that year if you itemize. And so we won't worry about the specifics too much here, but there is a massive tax advantage for those who fit this scenario. And I think that's the main takeaway on this give part. So let's talk a little bit about the grow side now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So growing the assets is also really important and something that you can really team up with a financial advisor on. So, once you donate these assets to the charitable gift fund, they can sit in the account and grow over time, ultimately generating more income to give back to nonprofits. This can be in a wide variety of investments. So it could be our investment pools. They could also be actively managed with an investment advisor such as you all. So a lot of different options in terms of the asset management piece. And, we do have requirements to donate to nonprofits over time. That's more in the grant piece, but ultimately you could choose to grow these assets as well.
So that's a really good thing to kind of understand how this thing works. Is some people will use it and they will gift like appreciated securities or something appreciated or cash into it one year, and then they'll disperse it to all the charities that year. But some people, if they need a big deduction that year and maybe don't want to actually give it to the charities all outright that year, they can leave some in, which we've had some clients that do that. It's accumulated and grown a lot, and they still give them a lot of money away. So it's almost like their own endowment that kind of they can use, right?
Yeah. And a lot of nonprofits like the fact that they get consistent income, they get consistent funds from donors. So if you wanted to use that bunching strategy where you're donating a lump sum upfront into the donor advised fund to get that larger deduction, you can then disperse the funds to nonprofits over time and, give the amount that you would have given each year, but you get that deduction upfront.
Yeah. And in some years, like some people might make a lot of money in a year for a certain reason, and this might be an ideal time to do something like that, but maybe not have to give it all to the charities right away. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think you hit that point well on growth is I want you all to think Roth IRA, tax-free growth along the way. So you get the tax deduction and this growth becomes tax-free. Now it is an irrevocable gift to charities, which we'll talk about on the give side. And there's a lot of questions I've received around what can you give, which options are available on that. So let's talk a little bit about the giving side now. After the growth happens and we decide we want to disperse it out, how does that look?
So it's really a simple, effective tool within a donor advised fund to grant to nonprofits. So it can be as simple as issuing a grant from your phone, similar to an EFT transaction that you would do, for your bank or any other investment account. So you have the ability to move funds electronically to nonprofits. You can designate to really any nonprofit that is a 501c3. So we have a lot of great tools on our website as well that walk through how to find these different nonprofits and helping you identify different values that you have. Yeah. And, you all also help clients with that.
Yeah, I think that's, some of the clients will say, well, do I have to pick the charities when I give the money? The short answer is no, right?
No, not at all.
And then the other question I'll receive is, well, how do I know that that charity is on? I'm able to give to that charity if I want to by opening up this fund. And so you educated us very well around all the options you can give to. Why don't you talk a little bit about that with us?
Yeah. So there's so many different nonprofit organizations, and, really as long as they're recognized by the IRS as being a public charity, you're able to gift to them. We do have a wonderful demo on our website where you can also search for nonprofits, and you'd be surprised just how many local charities that maybe only receive checks, a little bit smaller nonprofit organizations that, we've granted to in the past. And even if we haven't, we're happy to accept new nonprofits that are looking to have funds donated.
Yeah, I've been through that myself. My wife and I give to 8 or 10 places a year. And a few of them are just these like one-offs. There's this organization my wife became a part of, and it was kind of a fledgling organization. And so what you can do is you can go on and look it up as long as you have their tax ID number, which they usually have handy, and you can search it and see if the Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund has kind of created a relationship with them. And in this particular case, a couple of years ago, they hadn't. So I just initiated. I had the person there, Fidelity contacted them. They got it all squared away. They have to confirm that it's legitimate, 501c3, it's all set up right. And then once it does, then,
They just add it on.
They add it on, and then I send the check, and then it works really easy. So it's super, super easy to utilize, and you can go right online. I have one question that regarding the electronic payments you can send directly to them. Does that happen if that organization sets up a link with Fidelity Charitable, and then it just automatically happens if I say send money to this place,
as opposed to sending a check?
Yeah, right.
If they're enrolled in electronic funds transfer, we can EFT funds to them directly.
Okay, great.
But we also send checks. And another one item to note with granting to nonprofits, you can designate what you want the funds to go to. I had some family friends have a pickleball event, and I wanted to send a grant, for the event. And, it's a scholarship fund, but I wanted it to be known for that event. So just really neat ways if, people are running in a race, things like that, you can designate funds.
I just did one yesterday. My cousin has a son who has this condition. I forgot what it's exactly called, but he has like these tumors. And so it's something and so for the last like 10 or 15 years, him and his wife have like a walk for this foundation once a year, and they raise money for it. And so what I do is sometimes you can have your donation just go to, the general fund. Like when it goes to so like, for example, like our church, we just have it go straight to, and then let the church people decide. But in this particular, if I just sent it to that organization, it would just go to the general like headquarters organization. But I didn't want that. I wanted to go towards this. So they have this thing where you can click on custom and you can write it all out. So I just wrote out the exact thing that's happening, where it's happening, and it's for the benefit of. And so it works out great. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah. Love to hear that story.
Yeah, and along the similar lines around this granting giving is, if I remember correctly, you can be anonymous, or you can also specify yourself as the donee. Is that right?
Yes, you can specify as little or as much information as you would like.
Yeah. I think that helps with the flexibility around those that want to receive that recognition, those that want to remain anonymous, and everywhere in between. So you've given a lot of options within that fund for people to pick.
Yeah. Some people, this is kind of has a feeling, some people might have heard of something called a private foundation, right? And so a private foundation has a lot of similarities to what we're talking about, but why don't you explain maybe the differences and the similarities between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're both wonderful charitable planning vehicles and used for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they're used together. But some key differences. So one is the anonymous gifting. So with a private foundation, your 990, it's a tax form that you have to file each year. It is out there for the world to see. With the donor advised fund, you can grant anonymously, and you have one tax form. So we do all the record keeping. And the administrative costs of setting up a donor advised fund are usually a lot more efficient compared to a private foundation because, there are a lot of legal costs. Also, if you have to pay employees to run the foundation, a lot of different costs associated.
Yeah. And that option, and we've used it a couple of times because we just didn't want people to know that we were gifting. So you can literally put on there, like, don't let them know that it's just, and there's this check from the Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund that goes to the organization. So,
yeah. Let's talk a little bit along similar lines with the costs. So certainly much more efficient than a private foundation. What costs are associated with the donor advised fund with Fidelity as with all the setup, the record keeping, and what have you?
So we have an administrative fee. And that covers, everything from keeping the lights on at Fidelity Charitable, the record keeping, donating assets. So this covers anything from if you're donating cash or publicly held stock to also more nuanced things such as privately held investment interest, privately held shares. But this is starting at 60 basis points, and it's a tiered schedule from there.
So for those that are unfamiliar with basis points, that is 0.6% of the assets held in the fund. So just over 0.5% is what you're
It's
talking
definitely
about.
there, but it's like having a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund where you don't, like I tell people, you don't see it, taste it, touch it, smell it. It's there. So for example, I carry some extra money in this account. So throughout the year, and so I keep some of it in a money market account and some of it in a couple of bond funds. And so I don't see the actual fees in there, but my yield on my money market's a little lower because of the fee, and the bond funds is a little bit lower. So I can still make some extra money, but my intent for this account is not like make superior, incredible, returns. It's to preserve what I have. This is just me personally. So there's no free lunch in the world. This is a very reasonable cost for all these incredible benefits.
And I've self-realized helping clients with this over the last several years is the simplicity of it is pretty neat. It helps organize all these charitable components. You just put it in one pot, like you said, give, grow. I love what you said there, and then and then grant. So that I think helps with the foundation on what it is. What I think would make most sense now is let's talk about some of the strategies that people have utilized, what you've seen, any and all examples, to take advantage of this opportunity.
Absolutely. So back to what we mentioned before with the bunching strategy. So if there is a year that you have an exceptionally high income, so let's say you have a bonus, or even if you have some sort of liquidity event.
You want to do a Roth conversion? We're big fans.
A Roth conversion? That's
taxes.
a huge taxable event. So anytime where you're getting pushed to a higher tax bracket, this is a way to deduct some of that income. And also you can pair with it donating appreciated assets and avoid paying the capital gain taxes as well. I worked previously and still today with, people that have equity compensation. So, there's not a whole lot you can do when you're being paid out in terms of equity compensation. So this is a way to offset that as well.
Yeah. Wonderful. Who's in charge of the fund?
So we have a board of directors. Fidelity Charitable, I believe I may have mentioned this before, but I may not have, but we are a separate entity. So we were founded by Fidelity Investments over 30 years ago, but we are a separate 501c3 ourselves. So we have a board of directors.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Fully devoted to this. Which is great. And
so you can have, like, for example, my wife and I are on it. So we both can grant and have that option. When that's over, if there's still money in there, how does it work?
Yes, great question. So with the Charitable Gift Fund, there are account holders. So as you mentioned, you and your wife, you're the ones that are recommending grants to nonprofits, you're recommending investments, etc. When you pass away, it is really critical that you have successors on the account. So children or even nonprofit organizations, it's really critical to have these, such as beneficiaries on IRAs. And that is to ensure that your charitable legacy remains and, funds go to those that you care about the most.
Is there a time frame? Let's say somebody puts a large sum in there and they don't gift it all away, and they put their children on there, kind of like a private foundation would have. Is there a time frame of the children have to disperse it after the original donors put it on there, or no?
No, there is not. It's just our minimum granting policy of one grant every 2 years, and it's a $50 minimum for every grant.
That's great. So it can kind of work in a very similar format to give, let the children kind of continue the legacy of that.
I see that a ton.
Yeah.
So
let's talk maybe a little bit about, you mentioned a little bit, you can gift a lot of things into this. One thing that we are looking at, that James and I have a client that we're talking to, who there's a couple equity partners. One of them's going to buy in more. Another new equity partner is going to buy in. And that partner who's selling to them could gift these stocks into that, right? Like, how does that work exactly?
We see that all the time. And that is something that really differentiates Fidelity Charitable from other DAF sponsors, donor advised fund sponsors. we say DAF sometimes.
We're great at acronyms in this industry, aren't we?
That's our world, isn't it? Yeah.
Another acronym. But it's a seamless process because we're really fortunate to have a team of in-house attorneys with our complex asset group. So oftentimes I work with advisors like you that have clients that are going through a liquidity event like this. And, before anything is binding, before there's anything in writing, you can work with us on whether we can accept those assets into the charitable gift fund. So how it would work is the client would make the donation like they would appreciated stock. But with, private shares, you can deduct the fair market value into a donor advised fund. And compared to other charitable planning vehicles, you can't always you can always deduct the fair market value. But we essentially take ownership of these shares. We're on their cap table. Mm-hmm. And then, we look for liquidity within 1 to 2 years. And we ultimately would sell that private business interest. So, to the other partner who's buying.
Okay.
And then there would be funds available within the donor advised fund for your client to disperse to charities.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I figured that was somewhat the way it worked. And
another, item to mention, our in-house attorneys would work with general counsel, with the company. So they're really involved in that process. And, that's all included within the administrative fee.
That's great.
Taking a step back within when to use this and when to not. Let's start first, because I think there's very infrequent times when to not use it. Certainly if you're not charitably inclined, it wouldn't make sense. But when would else someone not want to look at it? And when are there opportunities where they really should start exploring this possibility for their situation?
That's a great question. So I would say, one instance to maybe not look at a donor advised fund and explore other charitable planning vehicles, when you think of control and, if you're wanting to employ individuals, such as with a private foundation. So you can grant to a tremendous amount of nonprofits, but if you are wanting direct control to specific individuals, that's an instance where a private foundation would likely be a better fit.
Yes, makes sense. When would it be applicable to look at those options for exploring using the Charitable Giving Fund?
Yeah, so if you are charitably inclined, if you have a high taxable income that year, and, if you're looking to use your skills in a different way and really exploring giving back to nonprofits, a lot of times I see a lot of executives, a lot of individuals who are ready to take that next step in their career or, maybe giving back to nonprofits that are important to them. This is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Another thing, and this is just me personally, that works out great. And I've alluded to this in the beginning, is because we know we want to give like a certain chunk every year. If we gave it to those 8 or 10 charities, the accountant it's a lot more work for them. And so since we gift it all into this, it's like this conduit. I call it a conduit account, where it makes it super clean and easy for you, for your accountant. And then you can just go online and disperse it out. And because it's such a big fund, they pretty much have covered and blanketed most organizations. So it just makes it like, even if you're just giving cash, it just makes it so much easier than doing it kind of all on your own.
You either keep your accountant happy because of the less work, or yourself happy because you don't
pay your accountant as much money.
There you go. Exactly. Even if you're doing your taxes on your own, you don't have 9 taxes.
This is a tax saving. It's strictly because it saves you money on taxes.
Love it. Anything else worth sharing about this fund that perhaps the audience may not know?
One other planning topic I see come up time and time again is incorporating this with your family and the shared values that you have. So this can start at a young age with young children, teaching them about giving back and, different ways to do that, because volunteering is great, but, giving your time, talent, and treasure, many different ways, different avenues to explore that. And also with estate planning. So, I mentioned it a little bit before, but legacy is important for all of us. Yeah. And, carrying that on with your family and those values. And then also just, having this lined up appropriately, working with your attorneys, your CPAs, your financial advisors, including this in that discussion, it's a great way to get others involved.
Yeah, as you talk about estate planning, I can't tell you how many times we've experienced clients saying, gosh, now that I have everything set up and it's all lined up with this roadmap, just that peace of mind I receive and that legacy I can provide, and it's clean and simple and all parties are involved, all working on this. It's just such a big deal once it's all said and done. That phenomenal peace of mind they receive gives us joy as advisors. So, well, thank you so much for sharing. Parissa, we have not shared this with you, but to close up, she's thinking, what's next?
She doesn't know what's next. That's right.
It is now time for Ed's Food for Thought.
All right. So I love food. It's crazy.
This
is how much I love food.
That's right.
I love food. I love sharing food ideas. I love meals. And so I always have a section in the end where I put on my chef hat and I share a great idea or food item or meal or recipe. We've done so many of these that I've run out of recipes. So I'm like on the search for good recipes. But this is something slightly different today. So the stage of life I'm in, I have 3 young adult children in their 20s. So my wife and I now are empty nesters. And my wife doesn't like to cook. So, since I do, the problem is, I get home from work, I'm a little tired. And so I'm not super excited to cook all the time. So we found a local organization, like there's some of these organizations that like prepare food for you and stuff, right? I forgot the names of them or whatever, but there's one that's local that we have now used for a long, long time. It's called Entree Kitchen. And I think they're out of Winfield, Illinois. And they're right down the street from us. In fact, I just picked ours up. Once a month, you go in and you order like 6 meals. Now, if you're like us, so there's only 2 of us, then you can have these meals sliced in half because you don't need all that food.
It's a family meal, right? Yeah.
And it takes me between 10 and 20 minutes to cook the meal. And so what's great is it's all laid out and all the ingredients are there. And sometimes you need like some olive oil or butter or something like that. But for the most part, I just wanted to like tout Entree Kitchen, Winfield, Illinois. The lady who runs
they're not paying you to say this, correct?
No, they're not. That's right. That's right. But I do want free cookies. They give away cookies sometimes. So anyways, Entree Kitchen, check it out.
Oh, I did not know that. That's a great call. So good. We'll be posting certainly their website in the show notes, along with the Fidelity Charitable website with all the information where you can find out and explore. And if they wanted to contact anyone at Fidelity, where would they go? What would they do?
Yeah, so I would say working with your financial advisor is a great way to, learn more about this tool.
Yeah.
Contact us, but if not, then work with hopefully a financial advisor. Most of them are familiar with these. They can track it down, and we know about the other organizations that do them, and they all have good platforms. But Fidelity's been doing it the longest, and they're very flexible and they're great to work with. So this has been awesome. Super excited. I talk about charitable giving, which I love. I talk about food. I mean, it can't be better than that.
You're having a good day.
I'm having a good day.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks.
Talk to you next time.
This podcast represents an assessment of the market environment at a specific point in time, should not be relied upon as investment advice, and is not intended to predict or depict performance of any investment. Any specific recommendations or comparisons that are made as to particular securities or strategies are for illustrative purposes only and are not meant as investment advice for any viewer.